The entire luxury restaurant fell silent as another nanny walked out in tears. The billionaire's 8-year-old daughter had just driven away her 12th caregiver in less than a year. She refused to speak, refused to eat, and refused to let anyone come near her. Child psychologists, tutors, and the country's most experienced specialists had all admitted defeat. Her father watched helplessly as his little girl retreated deeper into loneliness. Then, during the busy afternoon lunch service, a young waitress quietly approached the frightened child, knelt beside her, and did something no one else had even thought to try. Less than 5 minutes later, the little girl was smiling, holding the waitress's hand, and taking her first bite of food in 2 days. The billionaire stood frozen, unable to understand how a waitress had succeeded where every expert had failed. If you believe kindness is more powerful than wealth, compassion changes lives, and everyone deserves hope and a second chance, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that remind us what truly matters. 48-year-old billionaire Harrison Cole had built one of the world's largest logistics companies from a single delivery truck. He was respected for his intelligence, determination, and generosity, but behind every business success was a private heartbreak few people knew about. 2 years earlier, Harrison's wife had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their only daughter, Grace. The cheerful little girl who once laughed at everything slowly disappeared. She stopped talking to strangers. She barely smiled. She pushed away every tutor, therapist, nanny, and caregiver hired to help her. The more people tried to force conversations, the more she withdrew into silence. Harrison spent millions searching for specialists, believing someone somewhere could reach the little girl he desperately missed. Nothing worked. One sunny afternoon, after another counseling appointment ended in frustration, Harrison stopped at a quiet family restaurant hoping Grace might at least eat something. Instead, she sat motionless, staring out the window while untouched food grew cold on the table. Working that afternoon was 27-year-old waitress Claire Donovan. Most customers remembered her warm smile and gentle personality. Very few knew she had spent several years volunteering at a children's grief support center after losing her own younger brother in an accident. There she learned an important lesson from experienced counselors. Children carrying grief often don't need perfect words. They need someone willing to enter their world without trying to control it. Claire noticed Grace quietly arranging sugar packets into tiny houses. Instead of interrupting, she returned a few minutes later carrying extra sugar packets and placed them beside the little girl without saying a word. Grace looked up for the first time. Claire smiled gently and walked away. A few minutes later she returned with 2 folded paper napkins shaped like tiny birds. Again, she said nothing. Grace carefully picked one up. For the first time that afternoon, a faint smile appeared. Curious, Harrison watched from across the table. Claire continued serving other guests while occasionally leaving small paper creations nearby, a flower, a butterfly, a tiny boat. She never asked Grace questions. She never demanded eye contact. She simply joined the game Grace had already begun. Nearly 20 minutes passed before Grace quietly whispered her first words to Claire. She asked whether the little paper bird could have a family. Claire nodded. Together they folded another bird. Then another. Soon an entire paper village covered one corner of the table. Grace finally reached for her sandwich while continuing to fold napkins. Harrison could hardly believe what he was seeing. His daughter wasn't responding to pressure. She was responding to patience. After lunch, Harrison thanked Claire and asked how she had managed what countless experts could not. Claire explained that when she volunteered with grieving children, she learned healing begins when children feel safe enough to lead the conversation instead of being expected to follow one. Sometimes silence itself is part of healing. Harrison listened carefully. For the first time in months, someone had treated Grace like a child instead of a problem to solve. Over the following weeks, Harrison invited Claire to spend one afternoon each week doing simple creative activities with Grace. They painted, built birdhouses, made paper animals, read stories beneath old oak trees. Slowly, Grace laughed more often. She began speaking with teachers again. Therapists noticed remarkable progress, not because of one magical afternoon, but because she finally felt understood. Inspired by Claire's compassion, Harrison partnered with child psychologists, grief counselors, and educators to create community creativity centers where children experiencing loss could express themselves through art, music, storytelling, and play without pressure. Claire became the program's first family engagement coordinator. Years later, thousands of children found comfort through those centers. Grace eventually welcomed new families herself, showing frightened children how to fold the same little paper birds that had once helped her rediscover hope. Harrison often told audiences that the greatest investment he ever made wasn't in technology or business. It was learning that healing cannot be purchased. It must be patiently earned. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that changed someone's life? Please leave a meaningful comment below because your story may inspire another family searching for hope. As another warm afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows of the Community Creativity Center years later, Grace smiled while helping a quiet little boy fold his very first paper bird. Harrison watched proudly from the doorway beside Claire, realizing the impossible had never been a waitress fixing his daughter's pain in a single moment. The impossible had been believing that genuine compassion could come from someone the world often overlooked. One patient heart had accomplished what money never could. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, sometimes the greatest miracles begin with the smallest acts of kindness.